So you guys do this podcast for Action for Happiness. Can you tell us a bit about Action for Happiness and the work they do?
Yeah, so Anne, you first introduced me to Action for Happiness, so why don't you take this one?
Yeah, so it's quite a simple concept, really. It's a charity, so they're a registered charity, and the idea is that you make a pledge on their website to spread as much happiness as possible and reduce the amount of suffering out there. Basically, it's just personal, and whether that be in the workplace, in your personal life, etc. So that's just a simple goal, and they mainly put on talks, and they get prominent speakers, as you know, people like Jon Kabat-Zinn, Daniel Goleman, Mathieu Ricard, a whole host of very prominent speakers come along. So that's one of the things they do, and then on top of that, there's an 8-week what matters most in life sort of course that they run based on concepts in positive psychology. So that's a new thing that it's been about a year, hasn't it? Or longer than that. They launched it.
Yeah, they did a nice Kickstarter, when they made a video to try and crowdfund it. And within a month they hit their target, and what it's done is allowed them to help promote this course where you look online, it's either you can help to facilitate it or you can attend. And so that's what Anne and I did. We facilitated it, and the great thing about it is that each session begins with a tuning in session. You do a little bit of mindfulness. There is actually 1 week where you dig a little bit deeper into the mindfulness.
Yeah, it's called Exploring What Matters, isn't it? So it's
and they run that based on donation, don't they?
Yeah. So it's just
wherever you can afford.
Yep.
And they're able to do that because they hit their target with the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, one question you ask your guests is what matters most.
Yep.
So I'm curious to know what matters most to you guys.
Well, I like to answer this question in different ways depending who I'm talking to and depending who my audience is, because at one extreme I can get very Jim Carrey-esque. You know what I mean? Maybe we can touch upon that a bit later on.
Nothing matters, man.
Yeah, but if you really want to go down that road, then we can go down there. But for my friends and family, if they ask me what matters most, and it's the result of that 75-year Harvard study that they did about the quality of relationships.
Yeah.
And for me, and especially with mindfulness, being able to pay attention to, or improve my concentration, like when I'm spending time with my son, not to get lost in too many thoughts about what I should be doing for work. But what I'm really enjoying now is enjoying the relationships with my friends, with my colleagues, with my family, and that has been fundamental in my happiness, is enjoying these relationships.
Definitely. What about you, Anne?
Yeah, so I think I would agree with relationships, friendship, love. But on top of that, sort of as a human being, in what little way we can, I refer to the work of Peter Singer, actually. I don't know if you know Peter Singer, the philosopher.
No.
So he talks about practical ethics and what you could do, what little we could do to help charities, etc., just improve the conditions for the worst off in our world globally. So I think in what little way, because we know even Bill Gates, the greatest philanthropist in history, can't save the world. No president, no prime minister, king, whatever can actually switch a switch and put an end to poverty and suffering. But what little you can in your limited sphere of influence, try to just maybe, like you got the two sides, you got the dark side and the good side in Star Wars, whatever. If you just be on the right side as best you can, so to me that's important, that my existence has some value outside of myself.
Okay.
In what little way? I mean, I know you can't, as I said, change no matter who you are, the world overnight. But at least maybe add more, and so which is why I like the Action for Happiness ideals so much. That, it is to be the change. So it's trying to make the world a better place in the small circle of influence that I have. And of course, on top of that, selfish things that matters to me is like playing football. So that's a massive, those are personal things that I enjoy, but it's important looking after yourself and hanging out with friends and, all those things are important.
But those things make you happy, and then you're a happy individual in the world, and then that sort of has kind of a contagious effect, I think. It's that whole quote, like, be the change you want to see in other people.
That's right.
Exactly.
And I think it's of course it's be the change is perfect, because you realise that it will be empty if you just simply chase sort of personal selfish pursuits. You just want the best everything for yourself, and it's difficult to sleep at night knowing that there are people suffering and you just not, you're oblivious to all that. It's just you. I mean, it's easier to say, and sometimes we can be guilty of slipping into selfish mode, and I'm at the centre of everything.
All the time,
definitely,
all the time.
So we are aware of that. We're not saints, we're not trying to, trying to be perfect. But as far as we can try to at least be aware of others. I mean, it's quite simple, and the suffering of others.
One of the things that Anne and I often discuss is when we ask people, well, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Or where do you see yourself in the future? Or how do you want to live your life? And a lot of people don't know the answer to that. And that's a tricky one. But if you include, how do I help other people? Or, what can I do to, help other people? That can really help align the direction and the purpose in your life, because that is the Action for Happiness motto, Doing good feels good. And when you help other people, there's tons of scientific evidence to show that you get so much of that reward. And it's just something that reinforces itself. Doing good feels good. So you want to do more good, helping other people. And that's where this whole podcast idea kind of evolved, because I've always wanted to... I'm half Chinese, so in my mind, I've always wanted to go back to China and open schools and help people. That was always a goal of mine. So after university, I went to China. I was there for 2 years. First in Inner Mongolia, then Beijing, and it was with that idea of how do I help as best as I can. So teaching at the time was the best way, but it really helped open my eyes to this is what I want to do. It's helping people makes me feel good. And I started reading a couple of self-help books, and you read, it's like, well, it's about combining your passions. Helping people, yes. Having conversations. Because Anne and I, we've been talking about, we're good friends. Just like in our Jon Kabat-Zinn podcast, when John says, how did you guys meet? Yeah. And I said, back in the clubbing days, chirps and girls. And Anna was like, no, but in the we used to play computer games. I was like, yeah, clubbing, chasing girls, but that really represents a time in our life where...
Or your teenage days.
Yeah. But the all our friends, after about half an hour would zone out, and Anne and I would talk about Descartes, Plato, would talk about, philosophy, the purpose of life. Why are we here? What are some of the big questions? And even to this day, we've continued, and not all of our friends can join in these conversations, or not even want to. Same. Because and so that's the connection that Anne and I always had. And the Renaissance podcast was, okay, well, just as I think Brian Rose even said it, and Joe Rogan said it, well, what if we had recorded this? I know there must be a niche market of people out there that that are fed up of talking about the Wayne Rooneys and Brexit and stuff. They want to talk about, okay, well, what really matters in life, and have it and presented in a fun way.
Yeah.
And we've always been about fun, what relates to us, and if it relates to us, why wouldn't it relate to so many other people? That's why, the mindfulness, the mindful news that I posted recently is like, let me try and do like an interesting and fun twist on introducing people to mindfulness, and people that are already into mindfulness. It's, because I'm all the time just like, going on Twitter, search mindfulness, going on Facebook, search mindfulness, just like, what is there out there in the world of mindfulness at the moment? So I'm very interested in that. And that's why when I speak about mindfulness, I do it from a place where, imagine all my friends were listening, imagine my family was listening as well. How do I make it approachable and interesting? You know, last time we touched upon the Andy Puddicombe, you know, going on to Jimmy Fallon's show, and Jimmy Fallon, you know, it's one of the most watched late night TV programs. You know, and for have him to meditate and have Andy Puddicombe, it really shows where, you know, this shift and the popularity of mindfulness is going.
So much so that on a mainstream popular American TV show, entertainment show essentially.
I loved it. I loved it. That's, you know, when I mentioned the cave earlier on, have you heard of the allegory of the cave?
No, what's that?
Plato's allegory of the cave.
Oh, okay, yeah, shining the light onto the back of the cave.
So everyone that's in the cave, their reality is the shadows that they see on the cave. So if you talk about a cow or a chicken on a farm, then they would hold up the chicken, and then you'd see. So what they thought a chicken was actually just a silhouette of a chicken on the cave.
Of the people passing by.
People passing by, holding up. And it's funny, if you actually, you know, I'll post this up on the actual video that I make, but if you go Google images search, and then you have you check all the images, there's some really cool people are really creative how they present the idea of the cave. And
there's a nice short animation as well on YouTube about that.
Yeah. And our guys are friends at Total Philosophy do a really good video on Plato in the cave.
Yeah, the usual, I think they use plasticine sort of stop animation.
Yeah.
One really, really good. Anyway, yeah.
But it speaks very much to the guy that escapes the cave and he sees, okay, well, the chicken isn't just a shadow. There is actually a chicken. There's a reality to this. There's texture and there's color to it. And he experiences reality completely different to how he's lived his whole life. And then what he sees is a closer version of what reality really is. And then when he goes back and he tries to explain it to his friends, they're like, you know, what's this guy smoking? You know, what do you mean a chicken is? The chicken is that black thing, that black silhouette that we see. You know, what are you talking about? These colors and feathers and this and that. You know, this is our reality to it. And you know, when you talk about a lot of the deeper subjects in life, some of the big questions, you do kind of, for a lot of people, that's a conversation that they're not willing to have because they're so bigoted in their idea of what a reality is, that for you to present something so contrary to their way of thinking and for what they've been conditioned to understand all through their lives, you know, makes you seem like this weird guy. And that's one of the key learnings from that story as well about the cave. It's the negative reaction upon his return. People
the philosopher's return.
Yeah. People say, oh, well, you've now left you've come back. Because you've seen the light, you now can't see the shadows as well as you could before. So to them, they see him come back as having almost lost something, you know, rather than having gained the profundity of, even if now I have to live in the cave, at least I know I've experienced and I've tasted what it is, what reality actually is. So to go back to the story. So Anne and I were talking about these philosophical conversations, and you know, that's why our friendship has remained so strong. It's because, yes, we can talk about the Roonies and we can talk about the football and match of the day. But, you know, when we speak on the phone, I'll never ask, hey, how was work today? You know, how's work? How's family? Like, I've never once asked him that question, nor has he asked me that. Because, you know, I don't care about that, to be honest. And he doesn't care about, you know, maybe out of politeness. How's your son, Guy? But really, it's like, oh, yeah, did you read that book on mindfulness? Or did you hear what Dan Goleman said? Or, you know, it's what Sam Harris was talking about, the self is an illusion. These are the questions and these are the topics that really, this is what inspires us. You know, and again, back to the Renaissance podcast, that is the key theme. It's about philosophy, and philosophy meaning, you know, seeking truth. We are truth seekers, you know, and that has been the guiding principle of the podcast and our lives for that matter. And that was the path that led us into mindfulness.
Well, going back to Action for Happiness, they put on a talk recently by a guy called Mike Viking. I think that's how you pronounce it. He's the guy that's the founder of the Happiness Research Institute in Copenhagen. And he was saying basically that 75% of the difference in happiness in people can be attributed to 6 main factors. And they are social support, health, income, freedom, trust, and kindness. Which I think I agree to an extent. It's a lot of what we just talked about, that kind of social togetherness, that kind of thing. But I'd also add one more onto that list, which is being present. And one way we can achieve that is through mindfulness. And that's something I know you guys obviously have a lot of experience with. You've interviewed everyone from Jon Kabat-Zinn to Richard Burnett and Guy. You're doing mindfulness courses yourself.
Yeah.
For those listening that don't necessarily know what mindfulness is, can you explain briefly what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a working, Jon Kabat-Zinn's definition. I think that's one of the sort of easiest, most succinct.
The standard
definition.
Yeah.
Paying attention, deliberately in the present moment, etc. You can put the quote up on the screen, but I think it's a meditative practice, and rooted in the Buddhist tradition initially, but it's been sort of taken to the West by Jon Kabat-Zinn, as you mentioned. And so it's very simple to describe, but hard to master. I think Sam Harris talks about like tightrope walking, something like that. Yeah. So it's just, on a very basic level, mindfulness is a form of meditation, right? So just being present. And so there's the formal practice, and then there's your day-to-day being present in conversation, in how you eat, in, how you listen to people and walking, etc. So that's a very basic summary, but of course you were talking about it gets a bit deeper than that when you then, and we're talking about sort of master meditation, which we're not. So, the idea that eventually you come to the realization that the self is an illusion, but that's that sort of further down the line. So it starts off with a very simple, different levels. We refer to the different levels, isn't it?
You touched on a good point. That is the beauty of mindfulness. There's an infinite amount of ways that you can answer that question. And, the first thing I'd say is very experiential rather than like a definition. It's something that you really need to experience. And then you can get your own interpretation of what it is. But the way that I like to begin when I explain it is that from the moment you wake up in the morning, you're constantly thinking, you're constantly in thought. And that was one of the first learning lessons for me. It's like, I didn't even realize. I thought I'd wake up and I'm just in G mode going throughout my day. But the more that I did mindfulness, from the time that my alarm went off in the morning, or I'd wake up, I got to send that email. Oh, I got to do that got to have that meeting. And I wish that guy yesterday, I wish I was nicer to him. Or your mind is just bombarding you. And they said that you have approximately 70,000 thoughts every day. And 70,000 of anything can be quite exhausting in a day. And what we also learn from this journey is that the majority of thoughts that you have are negative. So if you're thinking 70,000 thoughts a day, the majority is negative, then that can actually spoil your happiness. Even when I was on holiday in Sicily, beautiful hotel, 5-star, sat by the pool and then just worrying, just not enjoying the moment, just thinking about how my dad's doing back at home. And so the beauty of mindfulness, if you really want to, on that first layer, if you like, just understanding how busy your thinking is.
Yep.
Realize that even if you wake up and you think, I'm worthless, or I'm no good, or I'm too fat, I'm too skinny, I'm too poor, or I have no skill, once you can realize that these are just the pattern of negative thinking that you have, it's very liberating. Because in that moment, then you have that thought, oh, I'm no good. Oh, well, if I can notice this as just one of these 70,000 thoughts that I'm having every day, I can almost now categorize it and just put it that. Notice it, but notice it for what it is. It's one of these thoughts of which you have 70,000 a day, of which the majority are negative, but it is completely normal. We all go through that. And I think that was one of the really kind of comforting lessons. It's like, even if you have the worst thoughts,
and that's what I was going to say, non-judgmentally as well, is part of Jon Kabat-Zinn's, because don't judge yourself for it. Yeah, because we all go through it.
Like, I'm a married man, but I'm walking down the street and I see a really pretty lady, I'm not going to quote exactly the thoughts that go on in my mind, but just to notice them and just say, oh, these are the thoughts that have just popped up.
Yep.
Take a breath and then come back to the present moment. Don't judge myself. Oh, gee, you shouldn't have thought that way, or it's just it's a thought that happened. Take a breath. Understand that throughout evolution, those that were more aware of the dangers around them, is that a stick or is that a snake? Is that a shadow or is that a lion?
Yeah.
It's that cautiousness that allowed the evolution of our people. So, if anyone was to take anything away from today, it's when you're observing your thoughts in the morning or at night when you're trying to get to bed, notice how negative they are. Notice the thoughts. But don't judge them, and also understand that it's completely normal. And because it's normal, you can embrace it. You can show it that kindness that it deserves. So when you have the thought, I'm no good, or I've got to have that meeting tomorrow, just realize that these are normal feelings, normal emotions.
Yeah.
And if you can start to catch it early on in that thought train exercise, then you can bring yourself back to the present moment. And that's the beauty of mindfulness, is being in the present moment.
Yeah. So paying attention in the present moment, deliberately, non-judgmentally, isn't it?
Deliberately, yes. Because sometimes people play basketball. Oh yeah, I was in the zone.
Yeah.
The Mihai Chicks and Mihai being in flow, the Stephen Kotler stuff. But to be able to call it upon demand. Not only when you're making love or when you're watching a movie do you feel present and you're totally involved. What if you could call upon it when you want it? That is the beauty of mindfulness. Being present, but being aware that you're being present and doing it on demand as well.
I think it was Jon Kabat-Zinn that said it's not about controlling the waves, it's learning how to surf.
Yeah,
I think that's a really good
I agree.
definition.
I love that one.
Yeah.
I love that one.
Thoughts are the waves. They're constantly crashing in all the time.
Yeah.
And how we choose to, perceive them is really...
And that's the misconception of mindfulness. If you think that mindfulness and meditation, when you see someone closing their eyes and meditating, their mind is not blank at that time. What they're actually doing in that moment could be an exhaustive exercise where they're diligently noticing thoughts.
Yeah.
And as they notice them, without judgment, taking a bit, but it's concentrating, anchoring yourself back to your breath, and thus the present moment.
And I was just thinking about how important it is and how destructive thoughts can be. So I remember a talk when Jon Kabat-Zinn says, I think he was being funded at the medical school, and people going around said, where what's going on? Is this it? Is this what we're paying for? And there's just people sort of sitting there or lying there meditating and but actually how we were talking earlier before we started the podcast about mental health issues, concerns, and how destructive there are very real consequences if your thoughts spiral out of control into depression.
Yeah.
So we can joke about, what you're actually doing nothing, or we joke about people joking about the mindfulness, don't we? So Guy and I always joke about how others, some of our mates, because we're really into
they know that we do mindfulness.
So they sort of joke around with us, but it's actually, there is a serious side to it, and it doesn't so you can see that there's an application to this. This has got very real practical applications. It's just right there, it's in front of you. Whereas something like closing your eyes and the thoughts, you can't see what's in someone else's mind, but it's very real to them. These destructive emotions could lead to self-harm, being a nuisance to others in society. So we're talking about children who if they're depressed, that will take them out of the education system, if you like, or their ability to succeed in school. And if you're an adult, you can't work because it's debilitating. So there's very real consequences to these thoughts, which to the outsider, I can't see what's in your mind. You can't, you can't say. So it's not a real thing, but it's real to the person. Yeah. So so something that seems very sort of distant from us, and this idea that, okay, we pay attention, we'll be, what good could that do? Well, we can see what harm negative thoughts can do, and if there's something that can actually help combat or alleviate some of the suffering and the negativity and the depression, then that would have a massive impact on the person and then the society at large, I think.
Of which mindfulness has been proven to, I think, out of anything out there at the moment, for someone that is suffering from depression, it's just, mindfulness doesn't cure everything. But from what the science is showing and the research, it's offered on the NHS to help people going through depression and going through stress. But not only that, but it's helping sports teams.
Yeah.
Like is it the Cleveland State Warriors? The people in America are going to be furious for forgetting the name. It's like saying Liverpool United, something like that. But the whole team doing meditation and mindfulness. It's not, and that's what I love about it. It's not just about stopping depression and not to have anxiety, but it's how to thrive in life, how to be happy in life, how to succeed. And when you're giving your presentation, do it from a place of confidence and do it from a place where, all right, let me be in flow. Let me give my best, not have to worry. What is my boss going to think? What if it goes wrong? What's going to happen to me? And like you can drown yourself in this negative language that, when it comes to the performance, will have a huge effect on how you deliver that. And but more importantly, it's the happiness that you can you pull from your day-to-day life.
Definitely, yeah. Well, that's one of the biggest problems with the current traditional approaches to mental health problems, is that they operate on a disease model. And what that means is that they try and fix the problem. And that's fine. That's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
So if someone's depressed, they try and stop them from being depressed.
Yeah.
But what it does is it brings them back to baseline. So it puts them in a state of languishing. So they might be free of mental illness, but they're not necessarily flourishing. They're not in a state of well-being.
Yes.
So that's where like positive psychology and things like that come in, because they talk about growth mindset, resilience, being in the present, mindfulness, and all sorts of things like that. And those are the things really that contribute to well-being and happiness.
Yeah.
It's not just having medication and a talking therapy, things like that. Although I think there are parallels between mindfulness and things like CBT, because like you were talking about earlier, Anne, a lot of people can be overcome with negative thoughts. And CBT is a good way of identifying those negative thoughts and changing the language, changing the way you respond to them, essentially. Mindfulness can be another good way of doing that. If you start to focus on what's going on in your head and it's constantly negative thoughts, you can start to label them. Oh, this is the part of my mind that tells me I'm rubbish. This is the part of my mind that tells me I'm a failure and I'm doing badly. You can start to label them and categorize them and move them to one side. Now, there's a really good guy called Dr. Mark Williams who has combined mindfulness with cognitive behavioral therapy.
The Oxford Mindfulness Centre,
Yeah, at the Oxford Mindfulness Centre, And I think it's things like that, really. It's combined, because obviously we know mindfulness works. It's been shown to increase the grey matter or something in the prefrontal cortex. And I think MCBT, which is mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapy, that's been shown to have 80% effectiveness in treating people who have had one or more episodes of major depressive disorder. So I think really it's combining mindfulness with sort of traditional approaches to mental health that is the best solution.
Yeah, I mean, because we don't want to take away all the good work that's been done in positive psychology, but mindfulness has come onto the scene as like this new craze. And so for us to say that mindfulness can cure everything would be the wrong way to go about it. But absolutely, as a complement to what exists out there, and I'd even go so far as to say that for me, in my own personal life, as a primary framework for my happiness and just understanding what my purpose is in life, or what it is that I want to achieve and how I judge my happiness, mindfulness adds an amazing framework. And some people find that in religion, some people find that in philosophy, where they're day by day, what is good and what is bad and how do I live my life, and that's why I think when people, we have a conversation regularly about religion and how, whether it's Islam or Christianity, it can add a significant structure in the way that you live your life. But the mindfulness, if doing it in this secular fashion, or secular and non-secular, you can be religious or you don't, or not religious, either way, mindfulness can play this huge role in you aligning yourself as to what really makes you happy and what's important in your life.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I think philosophy as well is another really important thing. Your philosophy on life, your outlook on life, and that's really what religion is founded upon. It's founded upon ancient philosophies. Stoicism is one that I read a lot about, and they talk about this concept of eudaimonia, which is sort of an ancient way of saying happiness and things like that.
That's our old, the eudaimon life. That was Anne showed me about that quite a while ago. Yeah,
just in the clubbing and partying and chasing girls' days.
You talk about MBCT, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, as a practical way, and that has been demonstrated to be very, useful. So I keep sort of having to justify to people. So I'm doing it now on the podcast that what we do and what we're passionate about can be useful. And I remember Jon Kabat-Zinn in his talk, and he said, people came up to him. He's very humbled by the fact that people said, you've saved my life. But what an amazing thing that is. It matters hugely. People sort of take the mick because we're enthusiastic about it. But I think it's a joke, isn't it? It's like, you attack what you can, so it's something that if someone's really into tennis, I'm sure. Like, you and your tennis. It's just that this happens to be the thing that.
Because we always say that, imagine we met someone and they kept talking about basketball. Yeah. All right, you know what? I'll give you 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour we could talk about. But if every time I met you, we had to talk again about basketball, I'll be like, all right, with the basketball.
Yeah, definitely.
But the thing is, like, when we talk to our mates, like, this isn't basketball, this is so much more. Do you know what I mean?
So I think there's a mindfulness though in basketball and playing tennis. Yeah. That repetition of hitting the balls. And I've seen you post videos of you playing the piano.
Yes. Yeah.
That's probably mindfulness to you, right?
I 100% agree, because what I love about mindfulness is that it's not about that 10-15 minutes you do in the morning. Right, those are the catters that you do. But throughout the day, that's the fights that you do. It's like when you're driving, when you're making love, when you're eating food, when you're on a conference call, when you sit down to write an email. Daniel Goleman said there is no multitasking. You think about one thing and you think about another thing. You're thinking about another thing. So you're kind of bouncing back between concentration. But what if you can write an email, but write it in its entirety, but just being in the present moment? That's what I love about it, is learning how to spend more time in the present moment. So when you're focused on one thing, being present and just accomplishing that. And we use the analogy of Netflix, where I'm going to watch this movie, you watch it, then within 2 minutes you're like, oh no, I should have watched something else. Then you go back and you start scrolling through all the different, let me watch that. Then you watch that, then 2 minutes into that, you're like, no, I should have watched something else. And it's like, the mind keeps telling you, no, you should be watching something better. You should be doing something else.
And that's interesting, because at the moment, I find that, back when you had to go to the video shop, and for your, I don't know how much it is, £3-4 or whatever it is.
I would spend a good 45 minutes in that video shop before making one selection.
But you make your one selection, you're stuck with it though. You see, you make your 45 minute, you're stuck with it, and then you watch it through, and it might take...
You might even watch it 2 or 3 times before you return it back to the video store. That's how it used to be back in the day.
But the first 30 minutes may not be great, but then the payoff may come later in the movie, and it's great. Now,
but you had to sit through it.
You had to sit through it, and you had no choice.
Nowadays, you at the click of a finger, you can just choose any series, any movie. Do you know what I mean? The option for you is so vast right now.
Yeah, and some of the movies may not be given the chance, and I find myself doing exactly that. The first few minutes, nope. Not enough action. You're
just battling your own decision.
Yeah.
So you choose to watch something.
Yeah. I'm even worse. Like a YouTube video, if I see it's like 7 minutes long, I'm like, is there a 2-minute version? But and you're asking them to explain big concepts like mindfulness in 2 minutes. I'll go for the 2 minute over the 7 minute one. And it's just crazy. My concentration span is just completely diminished. But that's sort of the key ethos of mindfulness, is that it's long term gain for short term pain. I think it's getting beyond that barrier and focusing your mind to the point where you can get to the end, and you get the rewards for that.
But not only that, but regardless of the situation, where if you're talking to the janitor, or you're talking to your boss, or you're talking to some guy that sells you the newspaper, it's just being able to give each person that same respect, give that same each person that same I see you. The one that Leon Logothetis just to be seen by other people. So when they say the highest respect you can pay to someone when they're talking to you is to be present with them. Because we've all had this conversation when you talk to someone and they're on their phone or they're just bursting to say their own thing.
Oh my God, yeah.
They don't want to hear. They're like, they keep interrupting you, and but they're being polite, and then as soon as you finish, they just go in with blah 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 about me. And that's what I think one of our skills as being podcasters is just really paying attention when someone speaks, soak it all in. And I used to have questions that I'd write down. I don't even write it down no more. It's like, if I forget the question that I really originally wanted to ask you, doesn't matter. Let that question go. I'd rather be present and just really get what you're saying. And then when it comes time for me to engage in my part of the conversation, it will come from this natural place of, all right, I've absorbed what you're saying, and here's my response to what you're saying.
Exactly that. I think it's natural as well to have things pop up in your mind. Like even in this conversation we've had, you've said so many things that have triggered like things I've read or quotes I want to make and things like that.
And you start spiraling off within listening.
Exactly. But I think it's about just recognizing that and just, I've let a lot of those go and just the conversations flow.
It's just to be here right now.
Exactly. When it's time to interject, it's time to interject. But I think, if I'd have interrupted you and been like, oh, I've got a quote, like, it's more about me than it is the progress of the conversation and what the message we want to get across.
And I've seen a lot of interviews as well. The interviews that I respect is that someone will, the interviewee will naturally come to the end of their conversation, and the interviewer just pauses for a moment just to regain and just think, all right, what's next? Rather than just being ready, because that's all has been in his mind. He's like, he's actually digested what you've been saying. And because of what you said, now I'm now going to ask my next question. And I think, so just to apply the mindfulness to podcasting and interviewing, that's something that you wish to pursue, right, in your career. It is that skill and that ability to just care less about what it is that you're trying to get out of the podcast and more about, responding to what's being said to you. Of course, you got your format and you got your, this is kind of what we want to cover, but Joe Rogan was a great teacher for me in that, even the Fight Companion, where they meet up just to talk about the fights that are going on, and they might spend like 90% of the podcast not talking at all about any of the fights that are going on. And that's beautiful, because that's almost lacking what we see on TV with all these adverts and interruptions. We've missed that form of media where we can just, wow, these guys are just having a conversation and listening out, and there is a huge appeal to that, where you could just hear people without the interruptions of mobile phones and that. They just, even if they're talking about pornography, or they're talking about MMA, or they're talking about mindfulness, or they're talking about hunting,
or Eddie Bravo's conspiracy theories,
or the Earth is flat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or 9/11 and Tower 7, those kind of subjects. But when you get into the flow of it, for me, that's where I really get into the zone.
And it takes all sorts of different unpredictable directions, right?
Always, yeah.
And
it's like tangents galore.
And suppose and Mark Williamson, you mentioned Oxford Mindfulness Centre. Is that right? Mark Williams.
Williams, who's now been preceded by Dr. Willem Kuchen. So the guy that we met in Oxford, Willem Kuchen, he's the one that succeeded Mark Williams.
I saw that. Nice tweed jacket.
Yes.
And he sort of, when he sits down to meditate, he says, there's not a direct quote, but sort of marvels at the mind's ability, to have a life of its own. Because when you meditate, some of the stories that I come up with, I couldn't have predicted and anticipated, because the objective is to, pay attention to the breath deliberately in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So you're watching, your breath, where you feel it strongest, and paying attention to that. And if the mind wanders, you take it back to the breath, and then it does wander, and it wanders about random stuff that you wouldn't have entered. You don't go into, you don't sit down to meditate and do with a story in mind. Your attempt is to pay attention on the breath. So there is no story, yet you will inevitably come up with a story that you hadn't anticipated. So that's me as an individual. No one else will go off on a tangent, and come up with a story that I would not have even seen. Wow, didn't know I was going to think about that kebab shop randomly.
but that
But it
is
just-
the entertainment that people I
Yeah,
think are
and-
looking for.
And so and the spontaneous.
Yep.
And the podcast is the same, isn't it?
It's not, hey, now let's cut to the advert where we have
Yeah.
our sponsors and
All
this and that.
planned. We talk a lot about how celebrity and money and isn't, as it seems, as wonderful as you would. You mentioned earlier about when
or
we were
what you were
children.
taught,
But
or what you were taught to
you know,
believe. Was
Yeah,
gonna be the
exactly.
happiness.
Rock star
Yeah.
and footballer for me.
Yeah.
Never ever good enough, but nowhere near. But you're a kid, you don't know any better. You want to play for England. You watch the movies and you see Arnold or whoever, Sylvester Stallone back in the 80s and stuff. Back in our day.
That's showing your age right now.
Showing my age.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s. And you think, I want to be a star like those guys or Michael Jackson, just because those were the people that were revered at the time, or the sports stars, all the things you think, and if I get that is success. So what do you want to do with your life? Don't you want to be successful? Yeah, I want to be successful. What does it mean to be successful? Recognized, and for those for being talented, for being entertaining, and all those things. But if that's the pursuit, the money, all of that doesn't.
Your priorities are wrong.
The prize wrong, and it's a hoax, isn't it? At the end
It's
of
a
it.
hoax.
Which what it always comes down to as well, like the people that achieve those heights of fame and stuff like that,
Yeah.
they always end up reaching this point where they've got it all, they've got everything, and they're not happy.
Yeah.
And Russell Brand was the same. And what does it ultimately come down to? It's philanthropy. They go back to the core concepts of happiness, helping others, connecting with family, things like that. So I
And
think
relationships. Yeah.
relationships.
And not all of them, but you look at like people like Robin Williams.
Yeah.
Who again, another childhood hero of mine.
Absolutely.
And you think with all that money, well, why would you be sad? You could buy a yacht, you can buy all the mansions and have all the women that you want, but yet you can't stop that 70,000 thoughts coming into your head every day.
And that's the real root cause, not anything else, isn't it? It's those thoughts that make the difference between sadness and happiness and looking at those pictures, being distracted, being mindless, looking at these pictures here, all these beautiful views, and you think, wow, wouldn't it be nice? But you think, well, how long will it be before you're there and you're like,
The mind starts to wonder.
I'm bored, and they're beautiful on the screen momentarily, but if you're stuck there 5 hours, stare at the same thing. I like one of my favourite buildings, the British Museum, for example. A grand building, big pillars, and lovely. And
History.
And if my home was this grand, that'd be great. But you still be bored after a while, because when we go to the British Museum, you stare at it, you have a coffee in that lovely room, and then you move on. You're like, what next? Where are we going to go for dinner? You're not going to sit there and be, blissfully, oblivious to the rest of the world, and just completely content for the rest of your life. There will be a moment, within, let's say, an hour of having a coffee. Okay, what should you do next? You walk around a bit, and then after that, let's go for dinner and blah blah blah. Nothing that you can buy that would stop the 70,000 thoughts. So you said, unless you do something like that in itself. And
and I think on that note, to end the podcast, I think that's, if there's any takeaways to take away from today, I've said that for the second time, but it's whether you've heard of the concept of mindfulness or not before, is that one of the truths that can be proven scientifically is that we're constantly in the state of thinking. And in order for evolution to protect our species, we that negativity bias, our brain kind of like attracts in that negative thinking, and it's helped us so much through evolution. But in our day, in this society where we live in, where it's a safer society, Steven Pinker, than we've ever had, we don't need to be constantly on the lookout. And when you combine that with the understanding that we're just 70,000 thoughts every day, you can start to put less focus and less power on these negative thoughts that you have, and then you begin to take a little bit more control into your own happiness.
I was going to say, like Jon Kabat-Zinn even said, I can talk about this stuff all day, but then at the end of our podcast, he sort of says, but don't talk about it too much as well.
Yeah.
You know, just experience.
It's more about the practice.
The practice.
Yeah.
So
It's
I
more
would
about
say
the
that
practice.
in order to get an idea of anything, really, you have to sort of engage in the activity itself. Practice.
Actions speak louder than
So
words.
Yeah,
on that
yeah.
note, renaissancepodcast.com, you know, we've got a couple of courses. If you like our style, you like our vibe, you'll find a couple of videos on there where we really try to say, well, what is mindfulness? All right. And not only what is it, but how do you apply it in your life to be happier? We're not talking about stress reduction or depression, and we're just like to live the most fulfilling life that you could live with that, you know, with the underlying idea of doing good feels good. But at the same time, like in the Airplane magazine, put the mask on yourself first. Sort your own shit out first. And then at that moment, you'll be in a position to help other people. You know.
I suppose, yeah, and being present, being in the now, isn't it? You know, because you know the old, what time is it?
It's always now.
It's always now.
It's always now.
You know, and it will help with that, being in the present, the only time we have, isn't it? Yeah.
All right. So just give us a little 1 minute highlight of where people can find out about you and, you know, your company and what your purpose.
Okay, so I work for Osborne Cawkwell.
Yeah.
They're a tuition agency that specialises in training their tutors in how to recognise symptoms of a range of mental health problems, and also helping their students manage those symptoms by incorporating mindfulness and meditation techniques into their teaching. If you want to find out more, go to octuition.co.uk. I'm a mental health advisor for them. I write blogs, I run workshops, and I interview people myself at our YouTube channel at Osborne Cawkwell.
All right, man. Look out for this guy. This guy's sharp. And like I said, it's all about the conversation. It's about the dialogue. It's you know, when you talk the language and people can resonate and they can you know, feel what you're saying. There's you know, there's a lot of good stuff that we can share, especially on the subject of the brain, thinking and being in the present moment. So thank you very much for coming down.
Thanks for having me.
For taking part in the podcast. And you know, Anne and I, had it not been on the podcast tonight, we would have been on the phone talking about something, you know.
And it's a great pleasure. So yeah, I'll echo what he says. Thank you.
No, likewise.
Really
Thanks for
enjoyed
having
it,
me. It's really cool.
Appreciate
All right,
it.
man, that's all right. All right, bring it in one more time.
Cheers. thank
Cheers.
you. But I'm still. I always like to throw in the last one. Actually, whether we
And
include
always
this or not.
throws it a lot. He
I like
always
it.
waits till right at the end to throw in the last one. Go on, throw in your last one then. What's your
my
last one then?
is actually
Final
the
thoughts.
Bring up the mic to your
Final
face.
thoughts. So my final thoughts for the day.
Anne's final thoughts.
But we were talking about, you know, our inability to sustain focus through watching movies. And there's a talk by a guy which we'll put up the link here, and he talks about how millennials and their in the workplace, and there's a problem with them. So it's a great talk. We'll put the link up. But essentially, that, you know, the sense of entitlement, that wanting things immediately, because we sort of, everything's at a click, everything's fast. We are losing patience. We, in the videotape, cassette tape era, we remember a time when I had to rewind the video, etc. And I could only choose one movie at the video shop and sit there and watch that movie through. Have now become, you know,
Infinite.
yeah, infinite and impatient. And we practice mindfulness. How come you guys are impatient with your Netflix choice? Because if we can be guilty, of course the youngsters out there are guilty of that. And so this guy talks about anything that's worthwhile doing. So we talk about his piano playing or maths education. That takes time and practice. There's no quick fix. There's no royal road to mathematics. You don't just boom, magic bullet. Now you've become. Now you can pass your A levels or you can get your degree. That takes hours and hours. One topic will take hours to master. And people don't give the time. You know, you got to have patience. You've got to have dedication, perseverance. You know, in anything. You know, bit of magic trick. You know, shuffling cards takes hours to master.
I was a bit of a magician.
Bit of a magician. Learning to drive, anything, any pursuit, mastering a sport, anything takes time. But people are losing that patience. They want it just like that. So there's a massive problem. Actually, the employers have identified with the latest generation to enter the workplace. So I think we're of a slightly different generation, slightly seniors.
We're the generation before internet and after internet.
Yeah, yeah. So
We're one of the few that
we're
will
a
ever
small window.
experience
I
that.
think they call it seniors. We'll look that up.
Seniors.
That I think can remember a time before the internet, but have spent most of their working life with the internet. So that's us, right? So we're not digital natives, but
All right, final thoughts and round it up.
well, I want to carry on.
But just to give my final thoughts on that as
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
I think the thing is,
It's
the
good.
key thing as well is to enjoy the process.
Yeah.
And there's a really good lecture by Alan Watts on life and music. I don't know if you've seen it before. It's been animated by the creators of
Yeah.
South Park.
It's one of our favourites.
We quote it all the time.
Same here.
It's
And
about-
it's basically it's about enjoying the process and how
Yeah.
through life we're constantly told that we go through the process, we go through school, we go through education, we go through
University,
work. We're going to get the thing. We're going to get the thing.
Yeah.
You get to a certain age, you get the thing. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
You've been had. Basically, it was a musical
You've
thing,
been
and you're
duped.
supposed to enjoy the
Yeah.
ride. Yeah.
Yeah.
So enjoy the
Yeah,
process.
enjoy the process, not just waiting to the end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why we're gonna put the goal is the path.
Yep.
All right. And there's London. Just to bring in London real quick. You know, it's about the journey.
All
It's
right.
not about that final note. It's about the whole
I
process.
thought we were
along
wrapping
the
up.
way.
Yeah.
All
No,
right.
it's been a pleasure.
Thanks.
Cheers.
All right,
Cheers.
cool.